Later today, Presiding Officer, I'll be speaking with Pat Waters, the President of COSLA, to discuss the very important joint announcement that's being made today on the UK Government's misguided plans to abolish the existing council tax benefit and cut the successor budget by 10%. As the Chamber knows, the council tax benefit is being devolved to Scotland and to English local authorities, but the sting in the tail is a 10% cut in budget. There are over 500,000 low-income Scots who benefit from council tax benefit. I'm delighted to say that by agreement with our local authorities, the Scottish Government and COSLA will jointly be funding the 40 million shortfall, which means there will be no cuts in council tax benefit in Scotland in 2013-14. With the new councils, when the universal credit is announced in 2014-15, to make sure we can continue protection of some of the lowest income Scots in the country. I'm sure the whole Chamber will welcome this joint action with Scotland's local authorities.
Johann Lamont.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. In March 2011, just before the Scottish Parliament election, the First Minister announced that Davidson Power Systems was going to invest £170 million in a new research facility in Renfrew, as well as a manufacturing facility elsewhere in Scotland. In the same week, he suggested the factory was going to Dundee. That was welcome news for the Scottish economy and the renewables industry. Since then, the word Davidson has been a key part of the Scottish Government litany of supposed economic successes. Indeed, John Swinney was talking about Davidson just last Sunday. But now it's been reported the First Minister was told in December of last year that Davidson were scrapping their planned investment. The First Minister announced they were coming. When was he going to tell us they weren't?
First Minister.
Well, I'm sure Johann Lamont really did mean to welcome the important news on council tax benefit, as I'm sure she'd like to welcome the better news we had yesterday on the Scottish economy. But she couldn't have listened to John Swinney's interview very well on Sunday, because the interview was discussing the Davidson announcement not to proceed with their investments in offshore wind, a decision they made last December. That's what the interview was about, and I've got the text of it here. I'm not certain if Johann Lamont actually listened to the interview she's citing. The reason that we are supportive of Davidson is that they employ 1,300 people in Scotland, and the research and development on their worldwide skills centre for boiler making is continuing that investment. And we also expect Davidson to make more investments, important investments in Scotland in the future. So John Swinney wasn't just talking about their decision on offshore wind last Sunday. He was talking about the hopes and beliefs that Davidson will continue to be an important investor in the Scottish economy, which is why, of course, he's meeting Davidson in South Korea today.
Johann Lamont.
The fact of the matter is, the First Minister announced this project. He said it was a great stride forward. Why would he not tell us of this stride backwards? Now, it has been reported that the Scottish Government wanted this news suppressed until after the local council elections. A Scottish Government spokesman in the same article denies this and is reported to have said that the Scottish Government wanted the statement out earlier. The First Minister's own budget bill reports on page 84 of the planned investment, and yet on the 25th of January and the 8th of February, when that document was debated in this chamber, that new information was not provided. Now, if it's true that the First Minister wanted a statement earlier, why did he not make it? Clearly Davidson Systems weren't sensitive about it. They let the story out at a trade fair in Denmark. Surely the Scottish people deserve to hear this before the Danes do.
First Minister.
Sorry, just the kind of ABCs of international investment relationship with companies. You don't make company announcements for them. If they wish to make an announcement, well, if Davidson wished to make an announcement to their supply chain, then they have the right to do that. That is their decision. But the announcement that Davidson had made, and the information was available. That's why John Swinney was discussing it with Douglas Fraser on the radio last Sunday. Johann Lamont clearly couldn't have listened to the radio interview that she was quoting. But what has happened since Davidson made their decision last December? We've had announcements from Samsung of 500 jobs in their investment in MEFL, making MEFL their centre of R&D for offshore wind. We have announcements from Gamesa of 700 jobs in the Port of Leith. We have substantial expectations in both NIG and Dundee as this offshore industry gathers strength. Many companies are investing in offshore wind, and many of these companies are investing in Scotland. One thing can be absolutely sure: as that succession of announcements is made and the thousands of jobs it's going to bring to the economy, Johann Lamont won't welcome a single one of them.
Johann Lamont.
I'm beginning now to get how this works. If it's good news, the First Minister announces it. If it's bad news, well, it's not in the business of government to make announcements on behalf of companies. This would be entirely inappropriate for us to take any responsibility. It's all their job. The fact of the matter is, regardless of the other investment announcements, this is a hugely significant decision for Davidson that we must have all concerns about, given the implications for jobs and our shared commitment to reaching our climate change targets. And I make the point again. We debated in a budget that reports on the positive news on this investment in January and in February, and the Finance Secretary doesn't mention it. And then we are told he mentions it in the bygoing in a politics debate on a television programme months later. The fact of the matter is, he and his ministers and his officials knew at the end of the last year about this very significant announcement. So why did he, his ministers and his MSPs and his press office keep on talking as if it was coming? And I know that disinvestment means much more in Scotland than just this project, but I think we all know what impression the First Minister wanted to create. Why did he allow his colleagues and his press office to keep on giving the impression that this project was coming to Scotland when he knew it wasn't?
First Minister.
Well, I think the law is actually, if it's good news, then Johann Lamont won't welcome it, and if it's bad news, the Labour Party will want to revel in it. The reason that we keep good relationships with Davidson is they're an important employer in Scotland. We have every expectation that Davidson will be making further investments in Scotland. And let me repeat, the Research and Development Centre, the World Specialism Centre in boiler production continues. That is an important investment in the Scottish economy. Davidson are therefore an important investor. But not every major engineering company in the world is going to go into the offshore wind market. Many are combining with Scottish companies across and round the coastline of Scotland. That is the news we should welcome. And let me repeat, since December, when Davidson made their decision as a result of the liquidity crisis in the Eurozone, as they put it, we've had huge investments made in the Scottish economy on offshore wind. The question is, are we as a country prepared to welcome the investors combining with our own companies and charting the future of engineering in Scotland? This side of the chamber says yes we should and yes we are. The Labour Party seems mired in that streak of negativity which cost them so dear in last year's elections.
Johann Lamont.
The First Minister again wilfully misses the point. We were unable to respond to this significant decision because the First Minister chose not to tell us. It's not about talking the Scottish economy or Scotland up or down. This is about the First Minister's integrity and the honesty of his government. For if this were a one-off, we might give the First Minister the benefit of the doubt. But there is a pattern here. Before the last election, while he was taking the credit for Davidson's planned investment, he used taxpayers' cash to keep the truth about his local income tax plans hidden from the public. And when he was forced to come clean, he chose the day his pal Rupert Murdoch got embroiled in a hacking scandal to do so. When academics criticise the First Minister, his aide writes false letters in their name recanting. Good grief! Good grief! The Advertising Standards Agency has even had to pull him up about the pandas. So the serious point, we have a shared concern about this decision. We have a shared concern about this decision about Davidson. But if he will suppress serious issues like the Davidson investment before the local elections, goodness knows what he will conceal before the referendum. After this, how can any of us believe a word the First Minister says?
First Minister.
Well, let me quote exactly John Swinney on Monday and Sunday morning. Davidson are one of the companies I plan to visit when I'm in Korea. Obviously, the decisions that Davidson have made have been explained by the wider economic circumstances within the Eurozone particularly. I want to make it clear that we have great encouragement, the real opportunities that exist within the renewable energy market. Now, where was the famed Labour press office when John Swinney was discussing Davidson last Sunday morning? Where was the statements from Johann Lamont saying she's very concerned with what's happened with the Davidson investment? The same as the lack of statements of encouragement to the Samsung investment and the Gamesa. Silence from the Labour Party and asleep on a Sunday morning. Can I just say that Johann Lamont says to me that all these dreadful things, but I know that she doesn't actually mean it. How do I know she doesn't mean it? Because I've been reading Labour Haim. Labour, yes I have, I confess. I've been reading Labour Haim. I know it's a bad habit, I've got to get out of it, but I've been reading Labour Haim. Dominic Dowling, the election agent for every Labour candidate in Glasgow, including what's left of the Labour Party and Johann Lamont's own constituency, says, on the Labour Party's attitude to me, he says, to deny he is connected with the electorate in a way that none of Labour's post-devolution Scottish leaders has managed to do is simply ridiculous. So out of the mouth and the tweets and the Labour Haim of the man who is masterminding Labour's campaign in Glasgow comes the essential word: Labour leadership ridiculous.
Question number 2.